Every civilization worshipped the light. But the Greeks, they worshipped what comes before it. To them, darkness wasn't the enemy. It was the womb of the divine. Because before there was light, there was Leto, the mother of gods, the mother of awakening. The ancients said the cosmos didn't begin with brightness. It began with silence. In that silence, the goddess Leto concealed the seeds of illumination. Artemis and Apollo. Night gave birth to twilight and day. Shadow became the architect of the sun. Leto represented the first stirring of awareness. The instant the soul begins to see that it's trapped in darkness. She was called Leto, from lethe, which means forgetfulness in ancient Greek, because every soul begins its journey asleep, forgetting what it truly is. The purpose of life was to awaken from that sleep, to move through the stages of light until you stand among the gods. The Greeks mapped the soul's ascent as 4 phases of light, each ruled by a divine force. 1. Leto, night, forgetfulness, the unawakened soul lost in ignorance. 2. Artemis, twilight/reflection, the seeker who begins to see the shadow for what it is. 3. Apollo, day, clarity, the illuminated intellect, the voice of harmony. 4. Zeus, mind, unity, the divine consciousness that governs all. Each stage was not a myth, it was a mirror. Leto was the human condition, Artemis, the philosopher's awakening, Apollo, the enlightened reason, Zeus, the god within. To ascend through these stages was to become whole again, to return from exile to remembrance. They said Leto wandered pregnant through the darkness, rejected by the world, searching for a place to give birth. That myth was not literal. It described the soul before illumination, pregnant with divine potential, but surrounded by blindness. Leto's journey was the struggle of every mind that begins to question. Her darkness was not evil, it was gestation. Because the first form of divine energy, the first dynamis of light, is shadow. The ancients taught, the observation of nature reveals that all light is born from night. So they didn't fear the dark. They studied it. They entered it consciously, like initiates descending into a sacred cave, knowing that the deeper the night, the brighter the dawn that follows. From Leto's womb came Artemis, the goddess of the moon, half light, half dark. She ruled the liminal hour, the silent bridge between ignorance and awareness. The philosophers called her the guardian of transitions. Every soul, before reaching enlightenment, must become Artemis, alert, reflective, and unafraid to face its own shadow. She was the goddess of the forest, the wilderness of the mind. Her arrows were not weapons, they were rays of reason piercing confusion. When the disciple first awakens, he doesn't yet see the full sun. He sees fragments of light reflected in the moon. That's why Artemis was both merciful and dangerous. She could guide or destroy, depending on how you handled the truth she revealed. Then comes Apollo, the twin of Artemis, the embodiment of the sun. If Artemis is reflection, Apollo is revelation. His light doesn't illuminate surfaces, it exposes essence. He is clarity incarnate, the god of reason, harmony, proportion, and truth. But the Greeks never meant reason as cold logic. For them, it was music. Apollo was the god of the lyre, not the equation. Because cosmic order, when truly understood, sounds like harmony. The planets move to rhythm. The heart beats in tempo. Everything dances to the music of the spheres. To awaken the Apollo within was to tune your life to that hidden melody, to act with the same proportion the gods used when creating the world. Above them all stood Zeus, not merely the thunder thrower, but the nous, the cosmic intellect. He was the final ascent of light, where understanding becomes creation. Zeus was the mind that sees patterns not in symbols, but in existence itself. In the Pythagorean language, Zeus was the union of the lightning and the idea, the strike and the thought behind it. When the soul reaches Zeus, it doesn't worship anymore. It creates, it becomes part of the architecture of the world. That was the secret. Divinity was not external. The Greeks saw the gods as stages of consciousness. To rise through them was to remember your own origin, that the human mind is a fragment of divine reason. The philosophers visualized this cosmic hierarchy as a pyramid, Leto at the base, the night, Artemis and Apollo on the sides, the twins of dawn and day, Zeus at the summit, the infinite mind. Together they formed the tetractys of light, the divine geometry of awakening. Each side reflected a stage of awareness. Together they formed the temple of illumination. In this pyramid, darkness is not the opposite of light, it's its foundation. Without shadow, light cannot appear. Without ignorance, wisdom cannot awaken. That's why they said, the light's first power is darkness. To move through these stages wasn't symbolic, it was lived. Students of the mysteries were taught to embody each phase through practice. They meditated on silence, Leto, practiced reflection and self-control, Artemis, studied harmony and truth, Apollo, and finally sought the stillness of divine intellect, Zeus. This was not mysticism, it was philosophy in motion. They called it the ascent of the soul through the four spheres. Each step purified perception. Each discipline broke another link in the chain of ignorance. When the initiate reached the level of Zeus, he didn't see himself as separate from nature anymore. He was nature, self-aware, luminous, divine. Modern minds think enlightenment means escaping darkness. The Greeks laughed at that idea. They saw darkness as sacred because only in shadow can contrast exist. They said that the night is the teacher, not the enemy. Without Leto, no Artemis. Without Artemis, no Apollo. This wasn't pessimism, it was profound realism. The philosophers knew that every human being lives a miniature version of this cosmic myth. You are born in darkness, you reflect, you rise, and you remember. The process hurts. The light burns as it reveals. That's why the path was guarded. Only those willing to die to ignorance could endure the illumination. Every myth was an equation of consciousness. Night plus reflection produces light. Light plus mind produces divinity. To ignore darkness is to destroy the equation. To deny it is to lose the source of your own awakening. The Greeks taught that light needs shadow to exist, just as Apollo needed Artemis, and both were nothing without their mother Leto. They were not worshiping deities in the sky. They were describing the anatomy of enlightenment. At the end of the ascent, when the soul reaches the level of divine mind, it realizes that the whole journey was a circle. Night and day are not opposites. They are eternal partners. Every cycle of ignorance and knowledge repeats through lifetimes until awareness becomes permanent. That's why the philosophers said the human soul is like the moon. It never loses its light. It only hides it behind the world's shadow. Enlightenment is not adding light. It's removing what blocks it. When Pythagoras' followers took the oath of the tetractys, they didn't just promise knowledge, they promised transformation. They swore to live in rhythm with the fourfold nature of light. The Delphic oracle echoed this when she said, "Know thyself," because to know yourself was to see that the same fire that burns in Apollo's sun burns within you. The temples were mirrors of the cosmos. The hymns were mathematical formulas. Even their architecture followed the laws of proportion found in the tetractys. The entire Greek world was a reflection of the belief that harmony is divine. They told us to fear the dark, but the Greeks told us to enter it, because only those who walk through the night can claim the dawn. The darkness you avoid holds your forgotten wisdom. The twilight you endure is your purification, and the light you seek is the fire of your own mind. So the next time you stand in shadow, remember Leto. When you feel torn between two worlds, remember Artemis. When you speak your truth, remember Apollo. And when you finally understand why you were born, remember Zeus. This is the path the ancients swore to follow. The passage from shadow to sun, the sacred geometry of awakening, and the proof that even darkness was once divine.